The sound isn't a roar. It's a rhythmic, mechanical pulse, a low-frequency thrum that vibrates in the marrow of your teeth before you even see the dust clouds on the horizon. It's the sound of the GMC CCKW, the deuce and a half, rolling through the Thuringian forest in the spring of 1945. To a woman standing in the mud of a village that has forgotten the taste of real butter, that sound is the heartbeat of a monster that might just be a savior. I've spent 20 years looking at the grainy celluloid of this moment, and the thing that always gets me isn't the tanks, it's the cardboard. That specific, heavy, paraffin-waxed cardboard of the American 10-in-1 ration boxes. It has a smell, a clean, industrial scent of paper mills and chemical waterproofing. It's the smell of a world that still functions. In the ruins of the East, where the air is nothing but the stench of wet soot and old fear, that smell is a miracle. You have to understand the dirt. It's not just soil, it's the pulverized remains of a decade of pride, ground down into a gray, clinging sludge that gets under the fingernails of every woman left in the path of the Red Army. They are waiting, not for victory, that ghost left months ago, but for the vibration in the ground to tell them which way the wind is blowing. When the vibration comes from the west, it's rhythmic. When it comes from the east, it's the chaotic, screaming thunder of the Katyusha rockets. The woman I'm thinking of, let's call her Helga, because the records say there were 1,000 Helgas that April, is standing by a roadside. Her hands are cracked. The skin is like old parchment because she's been digging, not for trenches, but for potatoes that aren't there. She sees the truck. It's olive drab, splattered with the yellow-brown mud of the German spring. And there is a boy driving it. He's 19. He's from a place called Nebraska, a place where the horizons don't end in smoke. He's chewing something. His jaw moves with a casual, rhythmic arrogance. To Helga, that movement of the jaw, the chewing of gum, is the most obscene and beautiful thing she has ever seen. It means he has enough. He has so much that he can waste energy on the mere act of chewing for no reason other than flavor. History tells us this was a tactical retreat. The politicians at Yalta drew lines on a map with fountain pens, and those lines sliced through villages like a butcher's knife through suet. The Americans had pushed too far east. They were in territory that belonged to Stalin now. The order came down, fall back, vacate, leave the territory to the Soviets. But the American GIs, these boys with their pockets full of Lucky Strikes and their trucks full of that waxed cardboard, looked at the women and they saw a terror that transcended the maps. So they started loading them. Not because they were told to, but because the silence of the German women was louder than the orders from Schaeff. I see the footage of the loading. It's messy, it's not a parade. It's a scramble of wool coats and headscarves. The women aren't carrying suitcases, they're carrying bundles tied with twine. They are climbing over the tailgates, their boots slipping on the metal. There's a frantic energy to it, a kinetic desperation. They aren't just getting on a truck, they are trying to climb inside the safety of a different century. And then the truck stops. That's the moment the documentary should dwell on. The silence when the engine cuts out at the new border. The boy from Nebraska gets out. He has a piece of paper. He looks at the line on the road. Maybe it's a bridge, maybe it's just a row of poplar trees. He tells them they have to get out. This is as far as the abundance goes. This is where the American miracle ends and the Soviet reality begins. I've read the journals of the drivers. They talk about the hands, the way the women's fingers would lock onto the wooden slots of the truck beds. They didn't scream. Screaming is for people who still believe someone is coming to help. They whispered, they begged. They offered the only things they had left, a silver spoon hidden in a hem, a wedding ring, the promise of work, the promise of anything. Just don't make us get down. Don't leave us in the gap between the lines. The abundance motif isn't just about food. It's the truck itself. To these women, the GMC truck was a mobile island of American democracy. If they could stay on the truck, they were part of the world that had the waxed cardboard and the chewing gum and the gasoline that smelled like progress. If they stepped off, they were back in the world of wood smoke and vengeance. Why did they beg to stay? We like to think it was just fear of the Ivan, but it was deeper. It was the realization that for a few hours they had been inside a machine that worked. They had felt the heat from an engine that didn't fail. They had seen men who didn't look at them with the eyes of wolves, but with the eyes of bored, well-fed teenagers. The contrast was a physical weight. You could see it in the way they slumped when they finally touched the ground, the way their shoulders dropped. There's a specific archival photo I can't get out of my head. It's a woman, maybe 30, but looking 50. She's sitting on the tailgate of an evacuated truck, and she's holding a discarded 10-in-1 ration box. She's not looking at the camera. She's looking at the empty box. She's running her thumb over the waxed surface. That cardboard is her last connection to a world where things are planned, where things are clean, where things are enough. The American soldiers were confused. They were young. They had been told that these were the enemy, but how can you hate a woman who is crying because you're leaving? The propaganda didn't prepare them for the begging. It didn't prepare them for the way a German mother would try to hand her child to a stranger from Kansas, just so the kid could stay on the truck. Think about the sound of the tailgate. It's a heavy iron clatter. Clang. That's the sound of a door closing on a future. Every time a woman was forced to jump down, that clang echoed through the valley. They would stand there, a small group of gray figures against the green of the trees, watching the exhaust of the trucks fade away. The trucks were going west, to the land of plenty, leaving behind a silence that was about to be filled by the sound of boots coming from the east. Was it a betrayal? The historians say no, it was diplomacy. It was the big three deciding the fate of the world. But if you were there, standing in the mud with a piece of American cardboard in your hand, it felt like being pushed off a lifeboat. The deep human element of this isn't found in the speeches of Eisenhower or Stalin. It's in the physical contact, the way an American soldier would have to physically pry a woman's hands off the side of the truck. I want you to imagine that. The sensation of cold, rough wood against skin. The grip of a person who knows that letting go means the end of her world as she knows it. The soldier feels her strength, the strength of a woman who has survived the firebombings of cities and the collapse of an empire, and he has to be the one to break that grip. He doesn't want to. He's just a kid. He wants to go home and see his girlfriend in Omaha. He wants a hamburger. He doesn't want to be the gatekeeper of hell. But the orders are clear. The trucks must return empty, or they must return only with the authorized personnel. We talk about the economic miracle of West Germany that came later, but the miracle started there, in the begging. It started with the realization that the West wasn't just a direction, it was a standard of logistics. It was the ability to move 1,000 women in a fleet of trucks that didn't break down. The women begged to stay because they recognized with a primal animal instinct that the Americans had mastered the material world. There is a messy truth here. Some of these women had been supporters of the regime. Some had looked the other way while the trains ran to the camps. And now they were the ones pleading for mercy from the decadent Americans. The irony is thick, like the mud on the tires. But history isn't a courtroom, it's a hospital. And in 1945, the hospital was overflowing. The American symbol, that waxed cardboard, represented a culture that could afford to wrap its trash in material better than what the German women were wearing as clothes. Think about that. The packaging for a GI's dinner was more durable than a civilian's coat. That is the abundance that terrified and attracted them. It was a power so vast it could be discarded. I wonder about the boy from Nebraska. I wonder if he ever told his kids about the women, or if he just talked about the deuce and the half and how it handled the mountain roads. I suspect he didn't talk about the hands. You don't talk about the time you had to be the one to say no to someone who was drowning. The documentary ends not with a map, but with a close-up of the road. The tire tracks of the GMC trucks are deep ruts in the earth. The rain begins to fall, filling those ruts with water. The women are gone. The trucks are gone. All that's left is a single crushed ration box in the ditch. The wax is peeling. The American dream is moving 5 miles an hour towards the Rhine, and the shadows from the east are getting longer. Why did they beg? Because they knew. They knew that for a brief afternoon they had been touched by a power that didn't want to break them, but simply had too much to give and nowhere to put it. They begged to stay because the alternative was the return of the dark, and the dark was already here. It's a confession, really. A confession that we, the victors, were just as frightened by the desperation as the losers were. We had the trucks, but we didn't have enough room for the world's grief. We had the abundance, but we had to draw a line where it stopped. The film fades to black, no music, just the sound of that idling engine 3 blocks away, getting further and further until it's just the wind in the poplar trees. The women are standing there still, in the mind of anyone who has seen the photos. They are still holding on to the wooden slots. They are still looking west. They are still waiting for a truck that isn't coming back.